The most renowned Greek-Roman wrestlers of the world have gathered to take part in the French Wrestling Championship. Hackenschmidt pinned his first opponent, not very distinguished, in 18 seconds. Then he faced famous French wrestler Robinet. Despite that fact that Hackenschmidt won the European Wrestling Championship among the amateurs just last year in Vienna, he hadn't been widely known to the professionals and the public. Back then, professional wrestling was at its peak, and it's needless to say that professional wrestlers were head above the amateurs. That's why Hackenschmidt's victory over Pons wasn't known to the wider public, not to say that even those who knew of it considered it just a matter of chance. It was quite a surprise to the audience when this unknown Russian pinned his renowned opponent in 3 minutes. He has a grip like a vice, and if he gets you on the ground, you're done for. These words, allegedly, were said by Robinet after the match. The Russian lion, who possessed great strength and at the same time speed and agility, had now drawn a great deal of attention on the international stage. However, this time luck was not on the young lion's side. On the next day, in the competition, after his sensational victory over Robinet, the right shoulder, Hackenschmidt's Achilles heel, got injured, but still he continued wrestling. He pinned renowned Aimable de la Calmette in 47 minutes, and his next match against Laurent Le ended in a draw. But that was it, a few more matches, and he had to stop. His arm became numb, and he was unable to move it. A doctor recommended that he take a 1-year break and avoid physical strain on the arm. After his arrival back home, Hackenschmidt stayed away from lifting heavy weights for half a year. However, he then intended to set a new world record in weightlifting and injured his just healed up arm again, which forced him to put heavy weights aside for quite some time. In May 1900, Hackenschmidt took part in local sporting events, among which was the high jump and wrestling, organized in St. Petersburg with the help of Count Ribeaupierre. In both disciplines, he won the first place. In wrestling, he pinned all of his opponents in but a few seconds, except Kosovsky. He managed to hold out against Hackenschmidt slightly longer than a minute. In the high jump, Hackenschmidt cleared 5 feet, whereas the best results of other contenders did not exceed 4 feet 8 inches. In June 1900, a big wrestling tournament was organized in Moscow. Among its contenders, there were renowned foreign wrestlers. The event lasted 40 days. Hackenschmidt won, among others, against Aimable de la Calmette, Constant Labuche, and Nicola Petrov, and became the winner of the tournament. Along with the first place, the championship belt, and the gold medal, Hackenschmidt received a sum of money, 975 rubles. Already in 1898, the rumor spread that Hackenschmidt had become a professional, but at that time it was refuted as groundless. Technically speaking, his participation in Paris, which took place at the end of 1899, put him, according to the views of that time, on the list of professionals, but in reality, wrestling had only started making him a living since the championship in Moscow. This is why a remark made in one newspaper, New Time, was spot on. George Hackenschmidt, among others, has left the ranks of amateurs and become a true strongman. And then the newspaper reports. After competing in Moscow, he, right away, headed to Vienna, where he has already defeated the following wrestlers. Then, Hackenschmidt took part in a wrestling tournament in Dresden, where, even though all the contenders were very good wrestlers, he defeated all of them pretty easily. From Dresden, Hackenschmidt made his way to Chemnitz. That's where Georg Lurik was at the time. Hackenschmidt called out him for a rematch, but Lurik turned down the offer and left the city. It is hard to say what was the reason behind Lurik's refusal. It is possible that he wasn't in perfect shape to take on such a rival and wasn't willing to put his name at risk. Or there could be other reasons. At the end of September, in Budapest, a big international tournament was hosted, and among the contenders there were very famous athletes. Hackenschmidt pinned them all, one after another, and in the finals he faced Kara Ahmed, a Turkish wrestler who was considered invincible. Hackenschmidt's body weight was 200 pounds at the time, Kara Ahmed's 140. The hot clash between the two wrestlers lasted 3 hours. The intensity of the bout reached its climax. The wrestlers were extremely strained, and the audience felt that the outcome was almost there. And indeed, Kara pushed Hackenschmidt with great force, charged at him, and tried to turn him over. But George, with lightning speed, managed to rise to his knees, and then, with unbelievable force, he threw the Turk over his shoulder and went after him right away. Kara Ahmed's shoulders touched the mat. He was defeated. What happened next was almost indescribable. In the blink of an eye, the audience had flooded the hall. The words "bravo" were reverberating, the walls almost visibly vibrating. The ladies were waving their handkerchiefs, and the young, fair-haired Hercules hadn't even noticed how the jubilant crowd had brought him up above their heads and moved in a circle. The storm of applause didn't cease. Some people were patting the Hercules on his back. Some kissed him. Those who got to touch him were the happiest. About the same time, Hackenschmidt's compatriot Lyric wrestled against another Turkish giant, Nurullah Hassan. Lyric managed to take his opponent to the ground but failed to pin him. It should be noted that Hassan was 6'5", his body weight 350 pounds, whereas Lyric was 5'7" and about 200 pounds, which understandably made him the winner in the eyes of the audience. The Estonian press responded very fast to the success of its heroes. Estonian strongmen are now abroad, where they demonstrate their strength. In Budapest, the capital of Hungary, the strongman Hackenschmidt defeated another strongman from Turkey, Kara Ahmed, and then Hackenschmidt was lifted up by the jubilant Hungarians. In the city of Barman, the strongman Lyric wrestled against Hassan. The mentioned Turk, whose body weight is 350 pounds and height 6'5", has already faced many strongmen, among whom was Kara Ahmed. The Estonian threw him to the ground but failed to pin him. The match lasted long, but neither of them managed to secure a victory. Lyric is the only wrestler who was able to hold out against this Turkish giant. After winning the first place in Graz and Nuremberg, Hackenschmidt returned to St. Petersburg to treat his injured arm, since it made itself felt after the tournament. Then another tournament in Graz was hosted. At the end of the year, Hackenschmidt took part in big tournaments in Paris. He defeated the Marble de la Calmette, securing 2 falls, as well as Dirk van den Berg and Constant Labouche. Unfortunately, during the tournament, he got flu, but still, against medical advice, continued to wrestle. The first match against Le Bouquerois, a Frenchman, Hackenschmidt won. The second one ended in a draw, but the third one ended in the Le Bouquerois pinning Hackenschmidt, who almost lost his consciousness due to hypothermia. That was Hackenschmidt's first loss in professional wrestling. Right after his recovery, Hackenschmidt competed in a wrestling tournament in Hamburg. Among the famous wrestlers that were defeated by Hackenschmidt at that event could be mentioned Dirk van den Berg, Paul Belling, and Jess Pedersen. When one of the best German wrestlers, Heinrich Haberli, after a 20-minute bout against Hackenschmidt refused to continue, the audience became extremely frenzied, resulting in the police stopping the event and dispersing the crowd. At the beginning of 1901, on March 14th to be exact, Hackenschmidt suffered a great loss. He received a telegram in which Krzyzewski's untimely death was reported. This unfortunate news deprived Hackenschmidt of the man he owed so much to. With his death, I lost the friend that was to me like a father, Hackenschmidt later reminisced. Life, however, goes on. With a great pain in his heart, the young Hercules continued to compete, staying true to the ideas on which he was raised by the father of Russian athletics, Vladislav Krzyzewski. At another wrestling tournament at the end of March in St. Petersburg, Hackenschmidt won the first place. Lassard and Petrov won the second and third places accordingly. During the Easter in Vienna, 1901, another wrestling tournament was hosted. Among all the wrestling tournaments that Hackenschmidt won throughout his career, this one he considered the most prestigious in terms of its contenders. Vienna was fascinated by Hackenschmidt. The article, "The Strongest Man in the World," in one of the newspapers was full of epithets, among which are such as youthfully reckless and strong like a titan, Hackenschmidt, mind-boggling strength, unfading human strength, endowed with the strength of Hercules, Hackenschmidt, 23, won the title of the champion of the world. And then, new tournaments, new victories. Having won the first place in Szczecin, Poland, Hackenschmidt competed in another big tournament in Berlin. There were two weight divisions, lightweight, below 187 pounds, and accordingly heavyweight. Hackenschmidt won the first place. It's interesting that Georg Lurik competed in the lightweight division. As for the results he had shown, unfortunately they haven't been preserved. It's also of interest that, on behalf of the organizers of the tournament, Hackenschmidt and Peterson conducted a 2-hour exhibition match. Once the tournament was over, another one was hosted almost right away in one Berlin theater. This time Hackenschmidt pinned Peterson, among others, in 24 minutes. He also won against Michael Hitzler, and in the finals defeated Paul Pons. By the way, Professor Reinhold Begas, renowned German sculptor, admired Hackenschmidt's Herculean physique and immortalized the wrestler in the sculpture Prometheus Bound. In October 1901, after a 3-month break at home, Hackenschmidt returned to the arena, this time in Moscow. Relatively fast, he pinned Hitzler, Raoul Lebouche, and Lassard, and it took him 7 minutes in total to defeat Moscow's 5 best amateurs. The same result was shown sometime later in Munich, where he competed against professionals. In the finals of that event, he again faced Eberle, champion of Germany, who, as was mentioned earlier in Hamburg, refused to continue after a 20-minute struggle against Hackenschmidt, and then surrendered. This time, Hackenschmidt changed his tactic. He let the German get a hold on him, and then countered it in a surprising fashion, thus securing the victory in 4 minutes. The wrestlers visited the most popular man in Munich, Hans Sterer, who, under the assumed name Hercules, used to travel the world exhibiting feats of strength, such as lifting weights with one finger, at which no one could beat him. Now he owned an inn, and in its basement there were all sorts of stones, barrels, and other weights. The owner was still in the habit of putting his strength on display. His guests could try their luck if they desired so. Hackenschmidt was able to slightly lift from the ground with one arm a stone weighing 660 pounds. After Munich, Hackenschmidt won an insignificant tournament in Elberfeld, where his most serious opponents were his old rivals, Jacob Koch and Dirk Vandenberg. At the end of 1901, in France, another wrestling championship was hosted. About 130 wrestlers took part in it. Nowadays, it may seem a bit confusing that during the same 1 year, one could win the title of the wrestling champion a few times. But back then it was not unusual, since there was no one governing body that united professional wrestlers and organized world championships. Big wrestling tournaments in which internationally recognized wrestlers took part were considered world championships. For this reason, there used to be quite many wrestlers at the beginning of the 20th century who held world champion titles, about 20 in total. For this reason, in order to really appreciate a champion of the period, one should take into consideration the names of his opponents. After Paris, new tournaments, new efforts. The stress of wrestling matches and constant physical exertion started to take its toll. Hackenschmidt's body weight had decreased significantly by January 1901, and in addition to it, his right arm's injury started to make itself known again. In a word, he needed some rest. From this followed Hackenschmidt's trip to Ausleben. He was invited by Albert Siebert, renowned German weightlifting trainer. During his stay, Hackenschmidt returned to dumbbells and other physical exercises and even set a world record at the end of January. He was able to lift from the ground a weight of 189 pounds, holding it behind his back. Some time later, on a bed, he performed one of his marvelous tricks. While keeping his legs together, he jumped over a dinner table 101 times non-stop. At the end of February, an article in a German magazine appeared under the title "Two World Records in 30 Minutes." Hackenschmidt performed the following exercises in Ausleben. While holding a 110-pound ball behind his back, he did 50 deep squats. After a short break and a few attempts with 66 and 77-pound weights, he performed the crucifix lift, holding a 90 and 89-pound weights in his left and right hands accordingly. Both arms were at the same horizontal level and the weights were motionless. It was said in the article that those weights were dumbbells with additional plates tied to them, and that had such implements been more compact, Hackenschmidt would have probably been able to hold even heavier ones. Hackenschmidt went to England at the beginning of March 1902. For quite some time he was unable to attract attention since Greco-Roman wrestling was not nearly as popular there as it was on the continent. If anything, the English betrayed some interest in American catch wrestling. On top of that, Hackenschmidt faced difficulty in finding more or less famous opponents, since many didn't want to risk losing to him. However, over time the situation started to change, and Hackenschmidt asked Jacob Koch to come from Germany and provide some help in preparation for the matches. In the summer of 1902, Hackenschmidt competed in Brussels, Liège, Namur, and other cities. Luck was still on his side. A gossip spread in August in Germany that he got severely injured in a car crash. However, it soon turned out that the crash hadn't been that serious and he was about to come back to England. After his arrival in Liverpool, Hackenschmidt faced Tom Cannon, a very popular wrestler in England. Cannon had already passed his prime by that time, and his loss was a relatively easy achievement for Hackenschmidt, who secured 3 falls. Nevertheless, it turned out to be enough to make Hackenschmidt famous all over Great Britain the next morning. He was offered a lot of profitable contracts right away in England as well as in Scotland. On his tour through England and Scotland, he pinned every rival, and on a few occasions he competed in catch wrestling as well. In September 1903, he injured his ankle in the match against Beck Olsen from Denmark, which resulted in its cancellation. It seems that Greek professional wrestler Antonio Pieri intended to take advantage of the situation and called out Hackenschmidt, which led to a match between them at spacious Oxford Music Hall in October. It took Hackenschmidt 25 minutes to secure a victory. Pieri then demanded a rematch where they first wrestled under the rules of Greco-Roman wrestling and then freestyle wrestling. Hackenschmidt accepted this offer as well, and, in both bouts, pinned his opponent within a quarter of an hour. But that was not over yet. The infuriated Greek promised Hackenschmidt to find him his match. At the beginning of 1904, Pieri came to London along with the terrible Turk Ahmed Medrali, who was much taller than Hackenschmidt and seemingly much stronger as well.